If you're thinking about getting into reloading, there's a good chance you're going to need to be able to trim brass. Today, let's look at some great options to trim brass for your reloading needs. There may be a few exceptions to this. For example, maybe you're only going to reload pistol calibers. Rejoice! Maybe you don't even have to worry about trimming brass. But for me, most of the calibers I reload, I have to trim every single time. There's a wide variance of tools you can get to do this. Depending on your budget and needs, one of these tools will likely fit. Most of the tools we'll talk about today are available at our channel sponsor, Midway USA. There are different options from various brands, from single caliber trimming systems from Lee at somewhere around $20 to very competent universal trimming systems that are somewhere around $200. Now first, let's understand why we need to trim. The trimming step is most commonly done after the brass sizing process. The full-length sizing process will make your brass longer, and you will need to trim it to safely fit in your chamber. If you look in your reloading manual, you will commonly find a minimum and maximum case trim size. This is likely what you're going to want to follow. If you do not trim your cases, it is possible for them to eventually grow too long, and even if they still fit in the chamber, when they're fired, they might not have enough room to expand during the firing process. If this happens, the projectile might not release from the case appropriately, and this can cause excessive pressure signs, and could even possibly be unsafe. In case you're not aware, if you're trimming brass, you're going to need to figure out some method of chamfering deburring as well. There are systems that can do this from both steps at the same time, but we'll just start with the basics. If you want to start out and load lots of different calibers, there's nothing wrong with the trimmers available from Lee. These trimmers require two separate pieces, the Lee cutter and lock stud. I do recommend the ball grip for any extended amounts of trimming. It's super cheap and it's a lot easier on your hands. Along with this, you're going to need whatever case length gauge as well as shell holder for the appropriate caliber you're loading. If you have a power drill, you can be off to the races trimming brass for a pretty low budget. One of the more obvious downsides to this system is it's going to rub at least a little bit on the inside of your case necks. Another possible downside if you're loading something with small flash holes, this pin might not actually work. There are very limited circumstances where that's a problem, but it's just something to be aware of. Make no mistake though, the Lee will work for the majority of applications and it's a very good product for the budget. Now this system can technically be operated by hand if you don't have a drill, but personally, I can't imagine not using a drill. But you do you. But if you're okay with hand cranking your cutter, the L.E. Wilson system is probably one of my favorite manual trimmers. And to call it a manual trimmer probably isn't fair. They do sell a case trimmer power adapter, but I've never even used it. I didn't really feel it was going to save me much time or effort. The best description that I can give for the performance of this trimmer is boringly consistent. Man, this thing just gives you the exact same cut every single time. The downside of this is having to insert and remove cases. This system uses case holders. You have to insert your cases into, insert your brass in the trimmer, and then you manually turn the crank until you've removed the necessary amount of brass. This system works really well. The only real downside is having to put it in and pop out all of the cases. Of all the universal systems that I've tried, they just haven't been able to touch the performance that I've been able to get with this trimmer. It's not the cheapest option, but it really works well. If the Lee system or messing with case gauges isn't really your style, there are systems that index off the shoulder of your size case that can trim pretty fast and effective. If you're not reloading for many calibers, something like this world's finest trimmer might be the answer, but as you increase the number of calibers, things start to get more expensive. This is one of the reasons why there are just so many options for trimming. Another great option if you're only reloading for bottleneck cartridge cases is the Frankfurt Arsenal Case Trim and Prep Center. This thing is motorized. It can trim, chamfer, and deburr all in the same station, though they are separate steps, but this thing can really move through some brass. It's fairly easy to set up, and the universal system can be adjusted for several calibers. If you're willing to spend the money and you have a wide array of cases, this might be a great option for you to really save some time. It doesn't really matter which system you use, just keep your brass trim lengths inside the values printed in your manual. After you have your cases chamfered and deburred, the next step is priming, and you can check out that video right here. I hope to see you in that video, and until then, stay safe in small groups.